Oh, sorry.
What do we have?
Oh, Lordy Lord. It is, we're learning Parshas Acharei. We're on page 722 approximately.
Are you now live? Are you live?
Yeah, we are. Let's find the place that we're on. Here, you know where we are? I'll tell you where we are. We're on page 715. 715. Yeah, look. We're making reference. I'm going to jump around, so don't get too comfortable. 715, the name of the portion is after the death of. After the death of who? Who died?
Aaron's sons.
Aaron's sons. It's an interesting name for the portion, after the death of. Right? So let's just read the opening words. God spoke to Moshe on the 1st of Nisan 2449. That's not very long ago. Immediately after the tragic death of Aaron's two sons that occurred on that day. God knew that Aaron shared his son's passionate yearning to cling to God, and therefore, in order to prevent him from suffering a similar death, he told Moses to promptly warn him not to repeat their mistake. Ooh. So the whole name of the Torah portion is "Don't kill yourself like your sons killed themselves." That's the name of the Torah portion. That's a pretty intense name for a Torah portion. Somebody died. Okay, so why would anybody else want to die like that? Right? Furthermore, instructed Moses to emphasize that on account of having improperly drawn near to God that they died, that it was on account of having improperly drawn near to God that they died. For he knew that only by threatening Aaron with death could he be dissuaded from emulating his son's example. Specifically, he instructed him to forbid Aaron to enter the Holy of Holies other than on the 10th day of Tishrei, which is the designated day of atonement, Yom Kippur, and only as part of the rites specified for that day as follows. The rest of the portion really talks about the observances of Yom Kippur. This is the portion all about Yom Kippur. It's a biblical commandment to observe this portion with all of its nuances on Yom Kippur. Oh, the trucker's with us. Daniel, good to see you with us, sir. Terry, Elaine, and Julia. Good. So, why, pray tell, did Aaron's sons die?
Sins of his father. The sins of their father. No.
Whoa. The sins of their father?
I say yes, sins of their father.
You're saying they died from the sins of their father?
Why else?
I'm just curious to know upon which source you base this off.
Aaron, what did Aaron do?
Oh, he did the sin of the golden calf.
Oh, thank you.
So they died because of that. Now,
yes,
that's very interesting. And children,
otherwise a little overkill. What did he pick on the? Because they ventured a little.
It's only little children that die for the sins of their father.
Only little children.
Only before bar mitzvah. That's why at bar mitzvah you make a special blessing. Baruch Sheptorani Me'ein Sheishel Zeh. Blessed is he who has finally absolved me from the punishment of this one. It is actually published in the prayer book here, page 64. Blessed is he who has released me from being punishable for this boy. You do that at the bar mitzvah, which means, therefore, that from bar mitzvah onwards, the father is no longer punished for the sin of the child. Right? By the way, the child.
He said that the children are punished for the sin.
Right. You're saying the other way around. The children being punished for the sin of the father.
Of their father, Aaron, for the golden calf.
Right. So now you're not basing that upon any particular information other than the fact that you know that Aaron committed the sin of the golden calf.
Well, I don't think I'm smart enough to have come up with that myself. So
I think you are very smart.
I think I read it somewhere, but I can't give attribution.
Look, the Acharei HaKadosh was an extraordinary commentary of Torah. He lived in the 1700s, and his full name, I forget exactly what it was, but he was a contemporary of the Baal Shem Tov. The tradition was that if the Acharei who lived in Israel would have met the Baal Shem Tov who lived then in White Russia, or Russia, if they would have met, Mashiach would have come. And indeed, the Baal Shem Tov was on the way to visit him. But there was a series of events during his travels that he had to turn back. There's a beautiful story, actually. The Acharei is passed away on the day of my birthday, on the 16th day of Tammuz. If you go to Israel and you look at the Mount of Olives, very beautiful story. Look at the Mount of Olives, and you see this oldest cemetery in the world that's still in use. It's 3,000 years old. So the Acharei is buried over there, and you notice that the mountain is covered with graves. It's overlooking the Temple Mount. and you see a clearing where there's no graves, just a clearing in the mountain, and then you see what looks like a larger grave, which is the Or HaChaim HaKadosh's grave. What it was in 1948, after the Arabs conquered Jerusalem, and from 1948 till 1967, the Jews were not allowed to go into Jerusalem. So the Arabs would try to uproot Jewish presence from Israel. You would start with the cemetery. A 3,000-year-old cemetery, might as well just plow through it and delete it. They put a bulldozer on the mountain and they started to just clear away the graves. And when they hit the Or HaChaim's tomb, the tractor broke down. They tried again. It turned over. It fell down until they realized that there wasn't anywhere around this thing. His tomb was too holy, so they just dropped it. So you have this awkward clearing in the middle of a mountain that's covered with graves. He was a very holy man. Now, the Or HaChaim, his commentary on Torah is sweeter than honey. He explains that the reason is, which was incorporated here, that the reason was because of their pining for the divine. They were pining for the divine. What does that mean? It means that they yearned to be one with God. So they entered into an unauthorized access point. They went inside of the Holy of Holies, which is why this commentary that we just read says, Aaron, you don't do what they did, which is don't enter the Holy of Holies except on the day of Yom Kippur as delineated below, right? Because you would normally would have wanted to do that, what they did, enter into a place where you're not authorized to go, and then you would die. What happened to them is that they actually experienced something called Kalesa Nefesh, which is the expiration of the soul, or the exuberance, exaltation, ecstasy of the soul. Ecstasy of the soul to the point that their soul actually evacuated their bodies. Much like a small candle when brought near a giant bonfire. What happens to the small candle when it nears the bonfire? It's drawn like a magnetic pull to it. And if it goes close enough, it's gonna jump over. So too, when these individual souls, we each have an individual soul, a piece of God. When that individual soul, piece of God, gets too close to the Holy of Holies, to the divine presence, to the Shekhinah, it's like a magnetic pull. It jumps out, and that's why. How did they die? In the portion of Shemini, which is chapter 10, verse 1 through 7, earlier in this book of Leviticus, it says that their souls emerged from their nostrils in two streams of fire. So their clothing wasn't even singed. It was only their soul that emerged out of their nostrils. What's the connection between a soul and nostrils? Anybody know?
God breathes his essence into you.
Vayipach Hashem nishmat chaim. We just learned it in Tanya chapter 2 that just like Hashem breathed or blew the soul into their nostrils of Adam and Eve, and we say every morning in davening before when we wake up, Elokai neshama shenasata bi, my Lord, my God, the soul that you have infused within me, you have blown it into me. Blown into where? Into me, into my nostrils, right? So just like the soul comes in through the nostrils, it comes out through the nostrils. Incidentally, I've taught this many times. This is the reason why we say zu gesund when somebody sneezes. You bless them when they sneeze. Why? Because up until the time of Jacob, a person would die anytime he sneezed. The moment you sneeze, the soul would evacuate. There was no warning. There was no HMO, PPO, medical insurance industry, no medical industry, because there's no such thing as illness. You just died when your time was up. It was a time's up syndrome. You died. But Jacob prayed to God to give him a heads up, to give him notice, and he gave him notice. He became sick, and that's why there's a whole hullabaloo in the Torah. In the portion of Vayechi, when Jacob got sick, nobody knew what to do. They called the king. Somebody gets sick, you call a doctor. They didn't call a doctor, they called the king, because they didn't know what to do when Jacob got sick. But he had time to bless all his children, which is the content of the portion of Vayechi. So when Jacob altered when Jacob influenced God to alter the human nature, such that the sneeze would not be a death sentence, but you still live, people were surprised. They would say, bless you, because it was a reminder of that. And to this day, we still do it.
Well, what's the message?
Of
the two sons dying, if they wanted to be so close to God.
Oh, so let's get into that. Let's get into that. So now, what they wanted to do was to come close to God. Aaron, too, would want to come close to God. Do you want to come close to God?
Well, I got God in my soul, so
right, but
I'm getting in touch with my own soul.
But think about it. When you realize something is good, you want to get as close to it as possible. When you recognize something as the source of your power, your blessing, the source of everything, you're like, yeah, I'd like to get close to that, right? There's a beautiful story, actually, of, throughout history, throughout Jewish history, this has really been the tension, the spiritual tension within generations. You know the story, the song, Ani Ma'amin, Be'yemuna Sheleyemo. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Mashiach, and though he may tarry, I wait his coming every day. That song was actually composed by the very, very musical Rebbe of Modzich, the Modzich Rebbe. And it was a beautiful story. I wrote about it once, about how it was smuggled out of Auschwitz, literally from the cattle cart. The Rebbe of Modzich composed it, and then he made he taught it to two boys in the cattle cart, and he said, whichever one of you will take this to my father or someone to freedom will be guaranteed a portion, to share my portion in the world to come. They both jumped out of the train. One died, the other one got there, and he taught the song, and that's how we know the song. So this Rebbe Modzich was so incredibly musically talented. One time when he was an elderly man, he needed to go through a surgery, a very dangerous surgery, and the doctors were afraid to give him an anesthetic because they didn't think he would ever survive the anesthetic. So they didn't know what to do. What do you do? You don't do surgery. He said, no, here's what I think you should do. Wait for me to sing. I'll sing. You put me on the table, let me sing. And he sang himself into a state of rapture. And he said, you'll know when you can do the surgery. You'll see. He sang himself to a state of rapture when he was out there. He was so removed from this worldly experience that they proceeded to do the surgery. True story. And he didn't feel a thing without any anesthetic. And by the time they were finished, he was still singing in that elevated state. I got to tell you, I noticed this. It's funny. I wonder if Mickey's watching. I noticed that recently I had a problem with my back, and I went into a certain doctor who's doing this special kind of chiropractic massage on me. And I said to him that I don't think I was totally present when you were doing that. I said to him, I think I was out there. And he said to me, he's a bit of an holistic medicine kind of guy. He said, yeah, you were in a beta state. You were in a beta state. Anytime I go in for a massage or such a thing, he says, he noticed about me. I don't know if everybody else does this, but I go into this beta state. I never heard of a beta state. So I said, oh, that's probably what happens when I give a sermon. Because when I give a sermon, some people go like this to me. And I didn't even notice. I literally thought, he said, no, that is an alpha state. That's interesting. I don't know if there's an alpha and beta state. I don't know. But it sounds good, right? There's this alpha, but I definitely do reach a state where I'm up there. I'm not feeling the pain. Do you know what I mean? I can identify with that.
When the congregants feel.
Yeah, the congregants.
We have. Oh my! Now we know what it's.
That's funny. Just use an elastic band or something. So I'm just saying that in that state, it's not what he was at. He was probably at some gamma level, But there's certainly this higher state of consciousness where you're not feeling what you normally feel. It's very interesting. I find that there was somebody that was noticing. He was coaching me, and he noticed when I was teaching Tanya. He said, when I teach Tanya, I'm a different person. He noticed that. He was like, because normally I move around a lot. He noticed that when I teach Tanya, I'm calm. It was just an interesting observation that he told me. And I thought, wow, that's very interesting. I wonder if that's got to do with what this is. Anyways, why am I telling this story? Because the Rebbe Modzich was able to reach this elevated state of being, right? Great Jews in history have always wanted to leave this world. In fact, great people have wanted to leave this world. Let's talk about the Arabs, the Muslims. Sorry, not the Arabs, the Muslims. What is the ideal for a Muslim? Think about it. What is? Okay, I'm probably going to overgeneralize.
Putting aside the 70 virgins.
That's what I'm talking about. They preach. Look, putting aside the awful directive, they preach an ideal of leaving this world. They want to die from this world so they can reach a better place.
Yeah, Christians celebrate that.
Christians do the same thing. Think about this. It's very, very interesting. Christians do the same thing. That you some Christian dies and they always tell you he's in a better place.
Right.
You don't say that to a Jew, by the way. You don't say that to a Jew because they don't know.
Are you kidding?
Better place. Well, I want to hear.
On the golf course.
Right? No, but the Christians, they're very into this better place thing.
Absolutely.
Right? Christians, Muslims. But Judaism is a profound rejection of death. You walk into a church, you see the guy nailed to the plus sign, right? And you realize they're glorifying death. They're glorifying death, all right? Right? The Muslims, they do the same thing. The mothers teach their kids. I hope that one day, and you know what? This is gonna be macabre. There's a macabre joke. Maybe it's off color. Probably is off color.
Yeah, skip it.
Skip it. Okay.
Offline.
Offline. All right. So they glorify death, but Judaism has struggled with it because human beings have always wanted to touch the divine, like the sons of Aaron. 4 great sages entered into the Pardes, says the Talmud. The Pardes is the divine orchard. Like an orchard is filled with delicious, luscious fruits, so too the Pardes represents the divine consciousness, the revelations of heaven. 4 great sages entered: Rabbi Akiva, Ben Azai, Ben Zoma, and Elisha ben Avuya. The Talmud relates in a stunning story how one of them died. Ben Azai hitzitz v'met. He saw and he died. He just died, like the sons of Aaron. Did exactly the same things as the sons of Aaron. He saw and he... Ben Zoma saw and he lost his mind.
So what you're saying is they crossed the line.
Yes, they crossed the line, but hang on.
Crossed the line.
But there's a good ending to the story. So Ben Zoma saw and he lost his mind. Elisha ben Avuya saw and he lost his faith.
Right.
He became a heretic. Came Rabbi Akiva and he came in peace and he came out in peace. Only Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi explains, how did Rabbi Akiva do this? What was different about Rabbi Akiva? Why is this rabbi different than the other rabbis? And the Rabbi explains, it was because of the way he came in. All the others, you just say what they did when they were there. But he was nichnas b'shalom v'yatza b'shalom. He came in b'shalom and he came in b'shalom. He came out of shalom. Because he came in with an initial mindset that was about shalom. What's shalom? Shalom is about existence, life. He came in with a presupposition that I belong here, and that's why he was able to emerge. The others came in and they were like, let's see what's going on the other side, and they couldn't handle it. But he came in and he says, I don't care what's going on the other side. I know I belong here. So there's this tension of ratzu vashov. Ratzu vashov means inspire, expire. Inhale, exhale. Up, down, push, pull. The ocean does this. The heart does this. Anything which is alive is in constant motion. If it flatlines, it's dead, right? To be alive, you need to have this rhythm of up and down. You need to be able to be inspired during davening, and then you come back down. To be inspired during Torah learning, and then you come back down. There's a beautiful story of the Alter Rebbe, who would learn with the son of his Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezrich. His name was Rabbi Avraham Hamalach, Rabbi Avraham the angel. Why do they call him Rabbi Avraham the angel? Because like an angel, he had very little to do with this world. He was an ascetic. He was an ascetic. So they had a deal that the Rabbi Avraham would teach the Alter Rebbe Chassidus, spirituality, and the Alter Rebbe would teach Rabbi Avraham Nigler, like Talmud, revealed part of Torah. But because he was an ascetic, the Alter Rebbe would play tricks on him. There was a deal for like 2 hours each, right? So the Alter Rebbe would learn with him for 2 hours Chassidus, and then he would change the clock back 2 hours, right? And the guy was aloof. He didn't know what was going on. He was like, oh, it's still 12 o'clock. It feels like, it feels like so much time has gone by. And he would steal from him these hours, so to speak. So the story goes that one time the Alter Rebbe was learning with him Chassidus and was so elevated that the Alter Rebbe realized that Rabbi Avraham was about to expire. His soul was about to leave his body. He was about to blow, to explode like a volcano. So the Alter Rebbe ran to the other room. He grabbed the warm bagel with butter, and he served it to him to restore his soul, to bring him back, right? So this idea of the sons of Aaron is exactly an idea which humanity has struggled with. It's a tension that humanity has struggled with since the beginning of time. They've always wanted to venture to become godly, become spiritual. Christians struggle with it. Muslims struggle with it. And even Jews, even Aaron, right? And the directive of today's Torah portion, the headline is, I know you want to come close, but you don't belong here. There's 10 different names for the angels. There's Malach. One of them is Saraf. Seraph. You may have heard of that name, Seraph. Seraph means burnt. Burnt. Why is an angel called burnt ones? Because these angels, they're like spiritual beings. It's like spiritual animals. What do? They see the divine and they jump in where they know they don't belong, but they yearn for it. So they get burned and they come back because they burned. And they keep on jumping in and jumping out. That's why they call it seraph, because they come in and they come out, right? They keep on getting burned. So the directive for us is that we too experience this struggle, and I'll tell you exactly how we experience it on a very practical level. A Jew is inspired to Yiddishkeit. And he says to me, Rabbi, why didn't I know this stuff for the first 60 years of my life? This is so beautiful. It's so meaningful. I want to devote the rest of my life to this. And he's the successful businessman. And what does he do? He says, Rabbi, I'm devoting the rest of my life to the study of Torah. I'm closing the business. I'm moving to Jerusalem. I'm moving to a kollel. I'm going to study Torah all day and all night for the rest of my life. I'm going to become a godly being. And the Rebbe's approach is, don't do that. Don't do that. You weren't placed into this world in order to be an angel, to be a spiritual ascetic. You were placed into this world in order to impact the physicality of this world, so that your business, your financial influence should be inspired. There's a person in our community from Chicago. There's a place called Niles, Chicago. He says his son runs a huge business with 300 employees over there, and the entire business is closed for Pesach, Shabbos observant, no interest to fellow Jews, all the laws. They keep all the laws because this guy runs a big business. But it's within the laws of Torah. Interesting, this guy, he runs the business from Jerusalem where he studies Torah all day. And he has a CEO out there in Niles where he runs it. Point being, we might easily be moved to say, I want to study Torah all day long. Don't do that. You shouldn't waste your time, but go out and impact the world. Ask not what God can do for you, but what you can do for God. We're sent to this world to make an impression upon this physical world, not to remove ourselves from it. You'll see that many Jews will aspire to sequester themselves from this world, lock themselves up in an ivory tower of Torah study, which is beautiful. And I am jealous of that. I would love that. But I know that's not where I belong. So I know I want to be there, but I know I need to be here. This is where I'm needed. That's where I want to be. Right? And just to conclude with a beautiful story of the Rebbe Rashab. One time the Rebbe Rashab was in a hotel in Vienna, and his son, the Rebbe Rayat, the Vigler Rebbe, came into the room, and he was a young man, and he sees his father on the couch, just in a total state of non-present. His eyes were wide open, and he was completely not present, but he wasn't moving. So his son left him alone. He came back a couple hours later, and he hadn't moved. His father hadn't moved from that position, that state of rapture. Eventually, his father told him when he awoke, he said, he didn't know where he was, didn't know what the day was, didn't know what time it was. But his father eventually said to him that whatever he had experienced in those hours was the foundations of the most deepest series of Hasidic teachings we've learned via Daita Moskova, whose third edition, by the way, just arrived to stores around America yesterday. But we have the expanded third edition here in my office. But that V'yodaita was the beginning, but 13, 14, and 15. 1915, those years, what's called Ayin Beis. That was what was visualized by the Rebbe Rashab then, which became a series of discourses over 3 years, which had become the most profound and deepest discourses of Hasidic teachings. So with that, I'd like to just conclude and say that the message is, you have to aspire to be like Nadav and Avihu. You should want to become spiritual, to become incorporated in the holy. But where you're needed is in this physical world. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
How about the Christians and Muslims that passed away are going to a better place?
Yeah.
Is that, and all of us, we know, I don't know, but Muslim and Christian, we have friends, and we hear that. You know, should we not say, just keep our mouths shut? Like, no, well.
I think that would be wise.
On the other hand,
It's not your business.
but on the other hand, wait a minute. When someone Jewish dies and the family member says, going to a better place, should we keep our mouth shut then?
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to a Jew, you can explain. You can turn it into a teachable moment depending on the circumstance. Obviously, if a person's in the midst of their grief, don't say anything.
Right.
But if you can spin it into a spiritual, into an intellectual or inspirational conversation, and say, look, why do we not say better place? Because we believe that this is the better place. This is where Hashem wants me to be, and now I no longer am able to perform my duties. I want to do what my Father wants me to do, not what I want to do. Right?
Well, that when we die, we will come and
Yes.
So we're not ever going not to the.
And I didn't make that up. The ethics of the Father states so explicitly, as it says that one moment in this world is worth more than all of the world to come put together. Yafeh shachas b'shuva ma'asim tovim b'olam hazeh, mikol chayei olam haba. 1 hour of 1 moment of tshuva and good deeds in this world is more valuable than all of the life of the world to come put together.
But the good news
And this is why when you wonder what the meaning of that is, this is the reason. Today's teaching.
but the good news is when Mashiach comes,
Oh, that's a whole different story.
But
then we're not in the bad
in
place.
response to what Warren asked, people, particularly people who are not religious Jews, in order to comfort them, they believe that someone, might be in a better place. They're in heaven. I was at a funeral of a 24-year-old spectacular girl who's granddaughter, friends of ours. And that people are not religious, but the parents and all kept saying, now she's in heaven, because she had suffered a lot. So that's comfort to them. I won't explain to them our philosophy. In response to Warren's.
If that works for them, right?
That works for them. That
Folks,
works
you want to
for-
sign off over here online?
Exactly.
I would respond to Harvey. This person is suffering. I mean, suffering, and they passed away. How can you say they're in a better place if they're suffering?
Oh, okay, so let me just comment on this. Let me just comment on this for a second. I shouldn't comment on this for a second because this world is where you need it to be. And Tanya explains to us at length, and I speak about this a lot, that now I know you might not like what I'm about to say, that your life might be very dysfunctional. You might have parents that are just messed up. You might have financial circumstances that are a disaster. You might have a job that is dead end. You might have physical ailments. That's how Hashem created this person. Because that is the struggle that person has to grapple with and has to illuminate. That's how Hashem created us. This is where we're needed. But heaven is like a retirement home. It's like a retirement home. It's nice, but I'm not really making a difference. I'm not making a dent up in heaven. Does that make sense? Lots of great comments coming in, everybody.
Much of a difference here.
I'm going to thank you all. I'm going to thank you all for joining us.
Yes, you are. Yes,
Okay,
you
guys.
are.